Ahoy, everyone. I'm Jackie Harris. Welcome to today's episode of Joysticks, where I interview game creators about the most joyful thing about making games for them. Today, I am joined by the incomparable Fertessa. Thank you so much for joining me, Fertessa Allyse. I am so delighted to have you today. You are the creator, producer, designer of so many games. Wicked and Wise, Menagerie, Mansplaining, Book of Villainy, Cascadia Junior, and Star Trek Cryptic. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I will open with the opening question of this podcast, which is, what is the most joyful thing about making games for you?
I think the most joyful thing about making board games is the fact that it's not done in a bubble. Like whenever you initially come up with the idea, at least for myself, it'll come from a question from within. But once I actually start making the prototype and taking it to places to get play tested, then I am getting all of this feedback, which ends up forming the final form of the game. So the game can't be finished without other people's input, and so it becomes this mix of synergy between myself as a designer and all the people that have play tested it to become its best self.
That's amazing. So, of all of the different kinds of games, what is it that drew you to like board games? Like, there's so much physical, because
Mm,
you have a card game, you have like an actual physical board game,
mm-hmm,
also Cascadia Junior, which you have been nominated for awards for,
mm,
is also like a physical, like there's a board.
yeah.
Yeah, what drew you to the physical board game?
For me as a kid, I always had a soft spot for board games. They ended up being a way for me to kind of express myself. Just because I was an only child growing up, and so I would play board games with myself. I'd also play them with my parents, but there is a time where you kind of age out and they no longer have the time. And so
Yeah.
I was the one person in my friend group that kind of stuck with board games. And since no one else wanted to play, then I would be the person playing against myself. And it was such a blast. So for me, um, I guess it was one, that nostalgia tied to my childhood of just the joy from that. But then also as I grew older, it was a way for me to connect with other people once I did find other people that enjoyed board games. Because it's difficult for me to start conversations, but with a board game between us, I'm able to kind of communicate in a different way and have a more relaxed way to interact with other people around me.
That's amazing. So, okay, you were playing board games with yourself. What were some of your favorite games growing up?
So I didn't even know there was a whole hobby of board games growing up. So I was doing the most basic payday, Monopoly, Risk, chess, checkers, that sort of a thing. Well, not chess when I was little, but definitely checkers. And I have a terrible memory, so it was actually pretty easy for me to do things and not cheat. Um, so yeah.
Well, I mean, so when you're playing with yourself though, you always win, you always lose, the whole.
So I give each player a different name. The player one will be Fertessa. That's my first name. And then player two will be Elise, which is my middle name. And so they have different play styles. And, I figure out before I start who I'm rooting for. So I technically don't always win, but I do.
Oh my gosh, you have like game avatars for
Yes.
yourself. That's so fun. That's such a creative way to play games, but
Mm,
not feel like you're by yourself.
yeah.
Um, I love that. Fortessa is excellent at Monopoly, and Elise is amazing at Shoots and Ladders.
Yep.
Is that
It's
what you
more like
said?
it's like for Tessa is going to be cutthroat and not make any deals regardless of what the game situation is. She's just gonna go fully aggressive, and Elise will take like risks and just be like, this maybe is like a shot in the dark, but let's see what happens.
And that's very cool. Do you think that any of that is like reflected in the way that you make games?
I think there are, of course, elements of that in that I'm anticipating that kind of player, those kind of play styles. But when it comes to game design, I usually am chasing a question, because that's what motivates me to do all the hard things of creating the prototype and putting things together. It's the interest in the question, that got me started in the first place.
What's an example of a question that has motivated one of your games?
So for my very first game, Book of Villainy, I actually started the game design before I became aware of how big the hobby was. And so it actually started from a conversation with a friend, because my friend group, we enjoy just creating things, writing stories, sewing, drawing, things like that. So one of my friends mentioned that she wanted to create a board game, and that was the first time I thought that that was something that was possible. So I got stuck on the idea of what kind of board game would I make if I could make any game in the world. And that I came to a game about villains, because whenever I do play games, my friends always pinpoint me as the traitor, or the person that needs to go out first for like werewolf, because I have like a resting mischief face. So I wanted to make a game where everyone had to be the villain. Um,
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
and then for Wicked and Wise, the question I was chasing for that, um, background, I'm not a huge fan of cooperative games. Not because I love competitive games so much, but because I find that cooperative games a lot of times are about solving a giant puzzle, and everyone solves puzzles at different rates. Me, slower than others. So, in a situation where
Sure.
everyone is solving the same puzzle at the same time, if you're not solving it fast, then you're not really, for me, participating in the game. Um,
Hmm.
so the question that I was kicking around was, what kind of cooperative game would I make that would appeal to me? Because there were some cooperative games that were exceptions and I enjoyed. So I explored, like, why was it that I enjoyed them, and like what did I think cooperation was? And I came to a game called Spades. I grew up with this game. It's a trick taking game, usually learned in your childhood or you don't learn it at all. But for me, that was cooperation because you had to depend on a partner without knowing anything that they had in their hand. And together you had to win books until, you got a certain amount of points. So I decided to make a game that was based off of Spades, where each player had their own job, their own role, in the game, and you couldn't see what they had, but they had to communicate with their partner in order to win. And that's how Wicked and Wise was born.
Yeah, it's true, right, that some folks who, when you play Wicked and Wise, some folks are dragons and some
Hmm.
folks are mice.
Yep, exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're trying to steal treasure,
Yep,
basically, and get gems and coins and stuff.
exactly.
Uh,
The dragons
yeah,
are playing
it's
the tricks to win, and the mice are manipulating their dragon's hands, in order to get better hands.
yeah, that's amazing. It's so true. A lot of cooperative games are, I think sometimes cooperative games feel like, don't get me wrong, I love cooperative games. I love pretty much all games, but
Mm,
I think sometimes cooperative games feel a little bit like a classroom.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like sometimes that's for like the folks that are the quickest, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always give everyone an equal opportunity to participate in the same way or
Yep.
learn in the same way, or
Yep.
when you're just set down a puzzle, everything like goes in one direction, and that sounds like everyone gets their chance
Yeah.
to have. That's amazing.
Yeah.
um the the um the way that's so crazy. I never really thought about how the way that games were set up being sort of like a way that you also decide to form relationships or not
Hmm.
with others. Are you do you want to I guess I'll ask, have you made other like collaborative games on purpose
Hmm.
um for that sort of reason?
Um, so the other collaborative game that I made, they were done almost under commission.
Okay.
So Star Trek Cryptic, I worked for Funko slash Prospero Hall at the time.
Hmm.
And so they wanted a escape room in a box. So that by nature was cooperative.
Okay.
Um, and so I approached that with a different question. But in my own designs, I've mostly stayed to non-cooperative. That was the one exception.
Okay. Very cool. Um, okay, so you enjoy a little bit of mischief, a
Mm,
little bit of mayhem.
yes.
Um, that's so fun.
Always.
It sounds like that's also part of the joy for you is
Yes.
figuring out how to make other people get to like play by the rules by breaking them a little bit.
Yes. I very
Um,
much enjoy being able to create moments. A game that allows people to have those fun moments with each other, not necessarily based on skill, but just like you will remember that this happened in the game. That's really fun for me.
yeah, and honestly, I feel like in a lot of the games, even if you are playing, I don't know, like even if you're playing like an RPG, like which is a large like or that ends up being a larger cooperative game, not all RPGs are cooperative, but
Mm,
if you are playing a larger cooperative game, the puzzle isn't really the piece that folks remember, and like,
mm,
and some people like games where you can fight things or what have you, and like sometimes those feel like memorable,
mm.
but I feel like in all the games, that you ever play, it's those moments
Yeah.
that you have that are like, yeah, I want to come back to this game
Yep.
as well. Um, yeah, absolutely. Games where the rug gets pulled out from under you, or something like of that nature, where everyone's like, "Oh my gosh,"
Hmm.
or eliciting a strong response.
Yep.
Um, I I want uh I want to give you the opportunity if you'd like to talk about um, Cascadia Junior or
Mm,
Menagerie
yeah.
and some of your inspirations for those. Is is what is it like? Did you find that it was a different kind of joy designing for children?
Mm. So, designing for children is a whole different world. And I don't know if I would use joy so much as exploration
Okay.
because I learned so much when designing for kids. And I didn't start designing games for kids until I worked at Funko,
Okay.
where, you specifically had age ranges you were targeting. And I had to learn that it's totally different trying to target 3, 4, 5-year-olds versus like 8-year-olds or 12-year-olds. And getting to actually play test with them. I think that was a lot of joy because I got to see the reactions live to this game I've been making, in a room with other designers, and we're just like theorizing how they're gonna play gamers playing this game, and then we put it in front of a kid and like, do they have a meltdown, do they have a yeah, like those were the true moments to test like what the game was doing and if it was meeting its intent. And I think all of the lessons I learned from creating those series of games, because we did a lot of small box games
Mhm.
that were given out in the they're sold during the holidays. Each one was a different challenge. And I think when it came to Cascadia Junior, my experiences working with Funko, flat out, and the original designer of Cascadia, Randy, reached out to me and asked if we could collaborate on a junior version of Cascadia, and like we already had a good relationship because we were friendly with each other, and they thought that it would be um, a good fit. So me and Randy sat down and really dissected what made a kids game, because there are a lot of kids versions of other board games,
Yeah.
um, and each company took a different approach when it came to distilling their base game to a kids game. But when I really looked at it, there are certain things that you want to pay attention to no matter what. The first one's physicality, because if you're aiming at younger kids, the attention span's going to be much shorter, and they learn with their hands, they learn with their senses, rather than like, this hand of information. That's the other thing, is no hidden information. If they're not 8 or older, no hidden information. They can't do it. Like, you tell them all you need is this queen card. If you get it, you're going to win the game as soon as it's in their hand. Look what I got, everybody.
Uh-huh.
They just can't help themselves. So, like, there's little hallmarks that you just need to know. And so we used that when it came to forming Cascadia Junior. And it ended up being a really beautiful distilled version of the Cascadia experience. Because I think the thing that was most important to me was figuring out, I talked to Randy to ask him, what did he feel was the heart and soul of Cascadia? And because when it comes to game design, I'm an advocate of finding what the core of your game is. Because when you're playtesting, it's very easy to lose it, and it's going to be basically the heart and soul of the game. So knowing what Randy felt was the heart and soul of Cascadia was how we were going to protect a, its essence while distilling it for children.
Sure.
So that's how we got to Cascadia Junior, and so happy that it did so well. Um, and then for Menagerie, that one I created. I was lead designer for that at Funko slash Prospero Hall. It was the very last game that I did before they had, huge layoffs. And this game, we were having like blue sky brainstorming session, and one of the ideas was insects. And they asked, who wants to take a game about insects? And I was like, I'll run with it, because I was really intrigued by the idea of doing something in the same vein as Wingspan, where you, and it wasn't like the mechanics of Wingspan, but what it was doing on a more phenomenal level of making people care about birds when you don't necessarily have an interest, a special interest in birds. Bringing that to you, having all of the pictures, and like collecting them and taking them in. I wanted to do that, but with insects, because when I looked around, there were some games about insects, but the majority of them were about killing them or battling as insects. Most, if you look on BGG, most of the games are just like, these insects are ugly, they're
Yeah.
gritty, you want to get in it. But there wasn't, I didn't see anything at the time that was showing beautiful insects.
Yeah.
So I worked to make a game that was accessible, where you were able to collect insects regardless of how interested you were in them. So people that loved insects would have something, and people like me who were scared of insects could safely collect insects and look at them, and admire them. Hmm.
That is so cool. Uh, that that I love that so much because yeah, I mean, I feel like if you were to make a game about insects, someone would be like, yeah, like a squash 'em or something like that. Um, but that's so lovely. The through line also that I'm hearing from you is so very much this games are design, like some of the games that you're talking about that you're designing are designed to teach you something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like when we talk about like gamifying something now,
Mm-hmm.
at least for me, I feel like that's kind of like a hack your brain situation
Yeah.
instead of like a, oh no, I'm actually being taught a thing, I'm actually learning something.
Mm.
Um, was it I can see how it was like very imperative to do that for Cascadia Junior for
Mm-hmm.
like the right amount of learning,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you're doing that for something like Menagerie, do you have to like be really specific about what you want people to learn?
Mm-hmm. So I had to be really intentional when making the game design and figuring out how not to overload or overwhelm people. Because just based off of my own experiences with games, too much text is going to be overwhelming, and the goal is to get people playing, and the goal is to get people to visually take in and maybe inspire a sense of curiosity so that they go and look into things otherwise. So for Menagerie, the team and I really discussed because I I created a giant spreadsheet in Excel or Google Sheets with all of these insects, like
Hmm.
200, 300 insects. And I listed all of the traits they had. Do they bite? Do they have poison? Are they
Yeah.
cannibals? Like all these different nocturnal, diurnal, all these different traits about these insects. And I had to condense that down. It's like I learned a lot, but
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
but
you had an insect masterclass.
exactly. But figuring out how to provide that and like make it a casual experience, so that you're just taking it in naturally. That was the line that I had to balance. So figuring out like, okay, we're going to specifically focus on these five different orders of insects. And like even looking up the scientific names, some of them didn't have scientific names, and we had to make something. Because we someone on the team reached out to the scientist who was like in charge of a specific insect, and they're like, it had a colloquial name but it didn't have a scientific name yet. So it's just very interesting. And
Oh my
we
God, that's so cool.
right, that was a fun, like, it's just wild out there in terms of science. But having the insect was prime, like the image, the illustration. We wanted that nice and big, which meant all other information had to be small. So the other information was the name of the insect and the scientific name. And then the other information were the traits at the bottom. But we had to figure out how many traits, which I think ended up being six different ones, and then concentrating on insects that had those six traits and like making a nice variety. Um,
Very cool.
so that was how we kind of decided to distill it. There were some ambitions of like putting some notes in the rule book, but really, I think that was the best way we were able to capture Menagerie in the world of insects. And, hopefully if it does really well, then we can expand and add more.
So, two questions. Did any scientists name any bugs specifically for your game because there aren't any names?
They did not. Our team,
Okay.
they were just like, it doesn't have a name. So our team was free to make the name of that insect. Um,
Oh,
but most of the other ones had their names. It was just like one, maybe two that was true.
okay. And did it change how you feel about insects or no?
It did. While I still have a healthy fear of insects, I think I have found myself stopping and not panicking like I normally would. Like in my backyard, within this month, I have seen a 10-line June beetle. And because my puppy was in the backyard digging, and I was like, that's a big thing that you're digging at. And I walked over, and I normally would have ran in the opposite direction, but I was like, that's a 10-line June beetle. Ha! That guy can't bite me. Great. Um, and then I saw another beetle that was overturned and long past, and I like used a stick to turn it, and it was a jewel beetle. And I was like, look at that guy. He was a jewel beetle. So I think, again, my sense of exploration upped, and I could at least assess, okay, this one won't kill me, so I can not run away. Yes.
I mean, that's like the most perfect story about how curiosity can really change your opinion of something.
Yeah.
Just like by learning more about it, you feel differently.
Yeah.
Um, wow. I love that so much that a game has changed the way that you view your own backyard.
Yes.
Um, that's that's so cool. Um, when you're when you're thinking about like I guess the question that I want to ask is there's a long list here.
Mm,
Um, when you're in between games, what does that feel like? Is it like, oh, I gotta make a game? Or is
mm.
it like, I'm here, I'm in between? Are you like, you know what I mean? When
Yeah.
like people's show ends and they're like, I need another show. Is it
Yeah.
like that? Or is it like, oh, well, I think I'll be chill here for a while.
it it really depends on, I guess, where I am in life. Like in the very beginning when I started um with Book of Villainy, I had thought that was going to be my one and only game done. But by the time I finished that journey with Book of Villainy, I realized that I was passionate about board game design. And like right towards the tail end of like what's the word? Shopping around to different publishers to try and get it signed, that's when I started getting ideation about my next game. Because for me, since I wasn't doing it full time, I could only tunnel vision and do one thing at a time.
Sure.
But once I started working at Funko, and then it was my full time job, I they were popping off. It was just like, oh man, I love this. Okay, I'm just gonna bookmark this and come back to it when I can. And often in that environment, I was working on more because it was full time. I was working on mm, anywhere from three to at one time 5 games at a time,
Oh my gosh.
and juggling those because I was a game producer there, but I also was a game designer, and so I would be juggling through different things and looking at different aspects of the game, which helped me with my creativity by
Sure.
switching between like what kind of tasks I was doing with each game. Um, but now that I am not doing it full time and it's like my own time, it's more. I have a game I'm working on, but I am taking my time.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I really really want to push it forward and work on it, but if capacity is not there, I got to give myself time to breathe
Yeah.
and get my creativity back up. So um whenever I feel that way, I still like to stay in touch with the community. So, having game nights and still playing games on online or with friends, that helps me still feel connected, and
Sure.
feel joy a different way from creating.
Do you have some that are your favorite to play for
Yes.
game night?
Um, so I
Specifically like others. I know maybe they're not cooperative, but
I really love Dune Imperium, and I've been playing a lot of Arc Nova online, and let's see, in person, No Thanks and Flip 7 have been have been coming out quite a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Um, when you're when you're working on a game, it sounds like you are not like me, who's like, I can read one book at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just leave a stack over here while
Yeah.
I concentrate on this one thing. But is it? Do you find that like you'll be playing or working on one kind of game, and you like are let's say for instance you're working on a cooperative game,
Mm.
and like do you get inspiration from that cooperative game on a game that perhaps isn't cooperative? Like does it like do different kinds of games inspire you to make different kinds of games?
Yes. So I can speak specifically to when I first started because again, I was starting with the bare like the most basic knowledge of games, which is what you would see in Target in the 90s, Monopoly, Payday, Risk,
Sure.
that sort of stuff. So when I started working on my very first game, I had no idea how to accomplish the things that I wanted. My very first prototype very much mimicked Monopoly because that was the only way I knew how to move pieces. Other than like, I think Catan, which is a whole different type
Ball
of
of
game.
wax.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was so stuck on how do I move and why do I care about moving them? And the way that I got out of that was I played every single game I came across. I joined several board game groups at the time I was living in Georgia. So I played every single game that I could. And it didn't matter if it was a game that I knew I wouldn't like, if it was a cooperative game, if I had never played it, I would play it because there was a lesson to learn, even if I didn't like it. Because I would then spend time figuring out why didn't I like this experience specifically. Because again, there are some cooperative games that are an exception, and I love them. So really figuring out why was this experience different was what helped me even find the pattern of like why certain cooperative games didn't sit with me and why some did. Um, so, and the thing that also I learned is every game I play, I'm playing the final version of someone's solution. Like they too were solving problems as game designers, and a lot of those problems overlapped with the problems that I might have. So I analyze how they have solved those problems, especially if they're ones related to problems I'm currently working on. And then I figure out, hey, is this a piece I can use in my own? And I try it out. Maybe that solution turns my game upside down, or maybe it's a perfect fit. But that was what helped me a lot.
That's so cool. I've never thought of a game as the solution to the problem of how to make a game. But now I can just be like, "Do you want to play this solution? Do you want
Hmm.
to play this solution?"
Exactly.
That's so fantastic. Um, does it have, does it ever feel solved?
Yes. There are times where I might want to solve it better. But I have I think my time at Funko helped me really uh figure out when to let something go because you can only work on it for so long before you're just kind of going in circles, and then whenever a game leaves your hands, um it becomes a totally different thing. Like uh when it leaves your hands, it takes on its own life when it's in other people's living room, and they are having moments you didn't anticipate. They're having moments that for better or for worse, you're not in a box and you can't like mediate, and it
Yeah.
grows beyond you as a designer and gets its own, lore. And I think you can never plan for that. You can hope for it, but you
Sure.
can't account for it. So it was in my best interest to figure out the stopping point where I was okay to let it grow to be its own thing and its true identity. And if it was what I wanted it to grow into, wonderful. I love that. And if it didn't quite live up to its potential, if it didn't quite live up to its potential, that's also okay because I'll keep working on games. It's just a fun
Yeah,
way to express
absolutely.
myself.
There, you cannot control the living room lore. You
Yes.
for sure cannot. Do you have a favorite game that you've made?
Ooh. Honestly, I really think it's Wicked and Wise.
Yeah.
Um, to me, that was paying homage to my childhood, and my identity as a black woman, because it's kind of a rite of passage for myself and my community growing up. Like, you learn this in school, you play this with the teachers, played it with your family, and it's also one of the few games that many black families will know how to play. And to me, it was also a basis of like analysis because there were many voices at the time that said, black people don't like to play games. You don't see them in the hobby, right? That's why you don't see a lot of representation. Um,
Okay.
and for me, I was looking at spades and I was like, not only do we like to play games, we get really complex rules. Like, and it's funny because you can bring, one of the more the heavier games and people are like, oh, that's too many rules. But when you look at spades and how many different layers of complexity there are, that tells me that it's an accessibility issue. And that tells me that it just needs the opportunity to like learn it and like weave it into the culture in order for it to be a game that people play, because spades is such a complex game, which again, if you don't learn it as a kid, there's a very good chance you won't, just because of like how competitive it gets. And so distilling that and like trying to have a game that played off of that so that I could bring it to my parents and say, "Hey, let's play this." And it's already based kind of on spades, and um that spirit of it made me really proud to do that. And yeah, it's not my most elegant game, but I have so much fun playing it personally, and I'm just really proud that it even came out.
No, that's fantastic. It sounds also like it's something that is so deeply rooted in community to begin with. Like when
Hmm.
you're making something historical, like games that have already like a memory
Hmm.
associated with them. Like, right? Because I mean, games that you grow up playing with, you learn from memory, you learn from watching them, you learn
Hmm.
from being in the room, right,
Yes.
with whoever is there, and you're learning not necessarily by being taught, but by the mistakes that everyone
Yes.
else is making,
Yes.
and so you learn how to participate in, like in community,
Yeah.
while also learning how to play a game.
Yep. I
um
have I have created some of the funnest memories from spades alone, and that's just like a deck of cards. I was disowned by my Spanish teacher while we were on a plane to Spain. She turned to my mom, who was a chaperone, and was just like, "Get your daughter. She's done." Because I played out of suit and we had the best winning streak. Like, I have never had a hand so good in the rest of my life. And we were killing it. And I played the wrong suit and got disowned by my Spanish teacher. And I will forever remember that. Um, it's just, yeah. And we were able to do that with a 52 card of decks. I mean, not card of deck, 52 deck of cards. Um,
yeah, absolutely.
so being able to try and create moments like that with, all the frills and components and things is something that I truly seek with my work.
That's that's incredible. I love that story. I am sorry you were disowned though.
Sorry, Miss Peterson. Mm.
That's so sweet. It it really is. I think when I was honestly researching you, I'll be very very honest. I
Mm-hmm.
was researching all of the games that you made.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked Wicked and Wise also because I grew up playing euchre.
Mm.
My family, which is another pair card game. You need a different deck or
Yeah.
like two decks, but like very similar experience. And I was like, oh, I know how to play euchre. I wonder if I could play this.
Mm-hmm.
And like having that experience because there's not a lot of like pair games. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was very unique.
Yeah.
And um, I think that in a lot of games, when we're talking about pairs, it's because you like choose to be a pair.
Mm-hmm.
Or when you're a kid, you're like, Mom, you're on my team.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And um it's really cool to see a game that's like, no, I purposefully want you to work with this person and you don't know a lot about what's going on, but you're gonna have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's also the thing that you were talking about creating moments. Like
Yeah.
when no one knows when you're like, come on now, and you don't know what's happening, but you hope the other person does.
Yes.
Like there are like 15 different game shows
Mm-hmm.
designed on that premise alone.
Mm-hmm.
So like that is so freaking cool. Um, I wanted to ask about um the uh the Book of Villainy.
Mm-hmm.
It's about B-list villains. Is that correct?
Yes.
Um, is there a certain level of freedom in B-list?
I mean, so from the get-go, when I was originally working on this, the pitch was you're a villain, but you're not very good at it. So you're writing a book about being a villain instead. And so my publisher took from that B-list villains and ran with it. So yeah, the villains I created, I had a lot of fun because I think the point for me was that they were villains that you actually want to play.
Mhm.
So having that playful humor was really important to me.
Awesome. That is so cool. Yeah, I was thinking of Dr. Doofenshmirtz immediately upon uh
Where's that one from?
Dr. Doofenshmirtz is actually a character on Phineas and Ferb,
Oh my
which is
gosh, that guy.
no, but he is extremely bad at it. And I was or someone like Megamind or like something
Yes.
like someone that's like the evil but like kind of the one that you identify with so much
Yes.
and are like, yeah, this would be fun.
Exactly.
Um, that's so cool. Um, it seems like that you were mentioning exploration when you were talking about Cascadia Junior, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing that there's a lot of like your process and your games are like fundamentally about this like level of curiosity. Do
Mm-hmm.
you find that that's true for your work? Is like leading with this sort of curious, like you
Mm-hmm.
want the people who play your games to be curious? You want to design games for the curious? Is that
Yes. Yeah, I try to definitely design for the curious because that's my mind whenever I'm discovering what is it that makes me fall in love with this game. So I'm already exploring that question, and I can only hope that for others who play it that they agree this is the thing that they love about it. But I think also there's a sense of discovery that I try to design for, especially when designing for kids, uh, because I try to put myself in the mindset of how I was at that age, if I can remember. And I'll look up, what are kids doing at this age range? Because there are also learning markers for kids of a certain age, and you can see what their milestones are. Like at this point, okay, they can actually hold a hand full of 5 cards, or at this point, it's the best they could do to be able to drop like a die, because it makes you consider the size of the components and the actions that the players are taking. And so when it comes to a game for 3 to 4 year olds, you get really limited, which I did Princess Present Party. And for
Princess Present Party?
yeah.
That's
Yes.
I need that game immediately.
It's using Disney princesses, and I came up with that one because I was thinking about what a kid liked most. Um and I for me, it was opening presents. Being able to discover what's inside. So trying to recreate this thing where you're getting presents to your correct princess is what you end up doing, because it's got to be pretty simple. They're 3 years old.
Right, yeah,
But
yeah,
the
for
sense of
sure.
discovery, I hope, is the opening and the exchanging of gifts. um because even going to I just went to my nieceling's third birthday party, and all the other kids were like helping her rip into the presents. I was like, there's a visceral joy of just
Yeah.
needing to open the presents. So just understanding, or at least trying to figure out, what are those moments where you feel like you are discovering something exciting or fun in the game.
So sweet. Yes, there's nothing that like three-year olds love more than ripping wrapping paper. Uh, Reckless abandon.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I want to go back to the 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 disappointing but not surprising statement of Black people don't play games
Yeah.
or Black people don't like games.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like you can pretty much insert here.
Mm-hmm.
Black people don't play games. Women don't play games. Just
Yep.
anywhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you find that 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 sentiment is still sort of like alive and well? Like the oh, these groups of people don't play
Mm-hmm.
games, and so when you're making a game, it should be for these people who do play.
Yeah. I find that the narrative has become much more open in the last few years compared to when I started in 2017.
Okay.
um at least online, I've been able to see a lot more progression, pushback when something awful happens, because
Yeah, we like that.
there's
Yep.
always something that's where someone, especially if games are made, I want to say, outside of the US, there are different levels of sensitivities. And so seeing that there's still checks and balances,
Mhm.
or there are currently checks and balances where people have outrage and call companies out on these things, is super important, because it took way more to move the needle in 2017, and I'm sure before that. Like, when I
Sure.
started into the hobby, I was in the South. So it was also a lot more oppressive than it is in Seattle, when it came to just unfriendly atmospheres. It was harder for me to find a gaming group where I was able to feel just good
Sure.
attending.
Yeah.
It took some going around, because I could walk into a board game shop, and a lot of them were like board game slash comic shops, but I'd walk
Hmm.
in there, no one would say anything, and I walked, to the back to participate in the games, and people are just like a scenario. These guys were just finishing up their game. I sat down beside them. Nobody said anything. And as they're putting up the bits, I'm just like, "Hey, are you guys gonna play another game?" And like one person looks up and is like, "I don't know. Are you guys gonna play another game?" And they just like look at their phone and don't answer. So
Oh
it's
boy.
like that's happened 2 3 times. um and it just it was you could feel it, and I hope that
Yeah.
it's changed now. But it was a total world of difference when I came to Seattle, as far as like attitude. um and again, after I want to say 2019, there was a much bigger call to action within the board game industry for active help and active mm, mm, inclusion,
Okay.
rather than kind of the passive one, because the problem is there are people out there, there are diverse people out there that want to play games, and we're siloed away. We don't see each other. And that's why it was
Sure.
important to me to get out there to do interviews and to go to conventions and things, so people like me could see each
Absolutely.
other. And like it went from just in that amount of time from being feeling like a chocolate chip in a cookie at board game conventions to, I don't know, feeling like three chocolate chips in a cookie. And that's still progress. Like I go to these conventions and I'm like, there's black people I've never seen before. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think, going back to your original question, um, yes, there's still, unwelcome sentiment out there, but I felt it much worse um, prior to 2020. And, but I will also asterisk in that I built up a community and I was able to like get roots in the community. Um, so I have more safety than somebody who's just stepping in and doesn't know where to go. So that's the asterisk.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's I'm sure it's also a very a different experience making games in a place where you either do or do not feel welcome playing them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it sounds too like I don't know. I think that my toxic trait is that I assume that everyone wants to play games. That's just you get a game. You get a game. Game.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a game. Um, but I mean that from the perspective of like there is a point at which everyone wants to engage in play,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like for you that's not necessarily in some ways that other people would, and
Mm-hmm.
that's great. And there's some folks out there that only want to play one kind of game, and there's some folks out there that want to play all different kinds of games,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some folks like you that are like, I'm gonna study every single one and I will
Mm-hmm.
become a master of mechanics of all things. um, but fundamentally, like the person that wants to play, you know, War,
Mm-hmm.
the card game,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily want to play Risk,
Yeah.
and also a game about war, right? And
Yes.
so like you can have games about this podcast is anti-war.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. But the concept of like you can have a game about something
Yeah.
and 30 different kinds of games about that thing,
Yeah.
and like just liking one of like the category of thing
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you have to like the game about the thing.
Yeah.
There's a million games about certain different kinds of things that maybe you enjoy instead. And I think a lot of I think folks who don't have community like inside gaming circles or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that don't feel the ability to explore what kind of games they even like.
Yep.
I think that there's also so many games out there now, in
Yep.
like not necessarily a bad way, in a way that like allows for people to have a voice and express, the way that they want other folks to play, and
Mm.
design an experience for others that is reflective of their experience and
Yeah.
creates empathy, etc. But it sounds like there's a lot of folks out there that might benefit from knowing about
Mm.
your games being like, yeah, this isn't cooperative.
Yeah.
We hope you don't work together. Be mischievous,
Yes.
please. Um, all right, I have one last question for you,
Mm-hmm.
which is, um, if there was a future of games
Mm.
that was a future that you could fall in love with, what would that future look like?
I think for me, the future of games, let's see if I can condense this. I would love to see games on the same level as video games, where like kids are able to acquire them and just like they're accessible. There's a huge variety. Like there's already a huge variety, but the accessibility is a problem. And people are able to just like at a whim kind of figure out, oh, I'll try this game, see how I like it, and like it's fine. But I feel like we're not there with board games. Even like being able to go through the tutorial and figure it out. And like there is a separation of board game from video game in that physicality and being in front of people. But when it comes to the learning of the game, I feel like there's so much that can be learned from video games and the streamlining of it and like how they gamify the learning. Like there's something there because that's a big barrier to as
Sure.
far as accessibility. And so like my big thing is making board games accessible to the greater population, and it's not just its own industry, but it becomes more mainstream in the way that you see with video games. um and I don't know right now how to cross that bridge, but that's what I really aspire to. Because going back to the question you had before, and like how there are so many different games with the same theme but different solutions, that people can find to figure out like what fits them. I think I think to my own journey as a gamer, and the fact that I loved board games since I was little, but I didn't find the board game industry until I was like 27, 28. Um, and that was me loving board games,
Yeah,
um,
sure.
and just not being able to find a space until I was a fully grown adult. So, like, there's areas where that's missed because some people grew up with board games and just like knowing that all of this existed, all of these spaces existed, and figuring out how to open those doors. Does it happen in middle school? Does it happen in high school? Because again, for me, what gripped me was making those moments. How do you create those moments naturally? Like, why did Monopoly become the biggest game ever? Because it was accessible everywhere. Candyland, every hospital has it.
Yeah,
Every camp after school, like everyone just has it. Everyone has a card of a deck of 52 cards. Just
sure.
what makes those things accessible? How did that become the exception for people that don't consider themselves gamers? And so a world where those aren't the only exceptions, and that it's normal for people to have 10 games, 15 games, in the way that they would have DVDs. Or I mean, they're obsolete now, but
Long live DVDs,
yeah.
though.
With DVDs.
No,
Exactly.
but yeah, that sounds amazing. The return to some sort of like tangible analog game that
Mm-hmm.
allows you to have an experience with the physical reality of play,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so very much, Fertessa. I enjoyed talking to you so much. Thank you for your time. Um, and thanks all of you out there for listening. I'm Jackie Harris, and I hope the joy sticks. Bye.